So everyone, first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming. And I want to welcome not only Cory Levy, but also all of you for what is Georgetown Law and Entrepreneurship Society's first event of the year. But before we get into today's program, I want to take a few moments to explain why I, along with our founding members, many of them, decided to restart this club at all. And I want to convey what you can expect to see from this club in the semesters to come, and I want to convince all of you to join if you haven't already. We started this club because we believe that there's something fundamentally missing in our culture, not only in American society broadly, but also at Columbia Law specifically. We think that the common path at this law school is too straightforward. It's too quiet. There's too much blue sky and not enough thunder, too little risk and too much reward, too much complacency and not enough courage, too much convention and not enough conviction. In contrast, we believe that entrepreneurship has a broad definition. It ranges from tinkering on technology to financing companies, from running a campaign to writing a book. But the common thread between all of these activities is the voluntary assumption of responsibility. And too many of our most talented people aren't taking on nearly enough responsibility. Too many are doing too little, while too few do too much. We're stuck in a deeply unhealthy set of affairs. Because a society in which our most talented sleepwalk exclusively into big law jobs is a society in which the climate crisis swings from disaster to catastrophe, where the presidential choices always range from old news to bad news, and where too few homes and too much disease poisons our social fabric. If you look around, it's very clear. America is in a series of crises. And as President Kennedy once remarked, maybe this country could afford Coolidge after Harding, but after Hoover, it needed Franklin Roosevelt. Today is then. We need new leadership in all areas. And this club is meant to represent a break from that culture of complacency. Our mission is to discuss big, imminent problems and disruptive ways of solving them. Our speakers represent not the dispassionate, but the dramatic. Our founding belief is that the words same and special are antonyms, and we believe that every person in this room has what it takes to be special. We feel that any of us can place our palm on the waters of history and watch the ripples sweep. And the first step to doing that is to think that it's possible at all, and that's what this club is going to be about. With that, I'd like to thank you, and I'd like for you to join me in giving a very warm welcome to our first guest of the year, founder, investor, and disruptor, Cory Levy.
Very hard act to follow. Thank you, Sahaj. Let's see. This works. Cool. Thank you for throwing this. That is a very hard act to follow. The last time we were in front of a bunch of lawyers, it was a different event, but here we are. No, that was a joke. But I want to share maybe 2 minutes on my background and then talk a little bit about the art and science of controversy. And I want to do something I've never done before, which is probably like talk for 10 minutes straight, kind of about that topic, and then maybe open it up to like an interactive kind of discussion on controversy, and then kind of any Q&As. And so a little bit of my background. I grew up in Houston, Texas. Any Texans in the audience? We've got one. Great. Make sure to laugh if I say any other jokes. Including that one. Grew up in Houston, Texas. Started working in technology when I was in high school. I tried to go work at Facebook and Twitter when I was like 14, but they did not want to hire a 14-year-old. I think it's illegal. But instead, someone suggested, why don't you go work for their investors? And so I cold emailed a bunch of their investors and said, you know, hire me. You invest in products that target teenagers but don't have any teen representation. So let me be that voice in the office, and they said yes. And so when I was like 15 and 16, I interned at 2 venture capital firms. One was called Union Square Ventures, that's here in New York, early investors in Twitter, Tumblr, and a bunch of other companies. And then the Founders Fund in San Francisco, which was kind of the first investor in Facebook and SpaceX, and got exposed to the world of Silicon Valley when I was in high school. I then studied computer science at the University of Illinois and have been kind of building and investing a lot ever since. Built one product for high schools that grew to like tens of millions of users, and that got acqui-hired maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And today I spend a lot of my time working on little projects and investing I like to be the very, very first investor into people, and have done that in probably 100+ people. Maybe 10 of them have turned into $1 billion+ companies. And a recent kind of experiment that I launched, kind of inspired by the Teal Fellowship, inspired by YC, has been this thing called Z Fellows, where I give 10 people $10,000 to take like 1 week off of school or work and try to like launch a side project or launch a company. And in that 1 week, we bring in founders of billion-dollar companies each day so that they can kind of meet them and get inspired. And some people go back to school or work after the 1 week is up, and other people go off and start companies. So that's like 2 minutes on my background. I've never spoken to a group like this, people that are in law school, and so I guess bear with me. But I want to share, last night I was thinking what I should talk about, and something that's kind of been on my mind recently has been controversy. I'm curious, from a show of hands, who thinks that you've done something in your work or in your personal lives that's controversial? All right, we'll get into that later. This will be a therapy session as well. So anyways, I prepared some thoughts. I want to dive into kind of the powerful impact of controversy and kind of how it affects success and how it shapes our world and perceptions. And history, I think, is full of figures who have done controversial things, and there are plenty of people who haven't done controversial things, but it seems that history has largely forgotten them. I personally think only those willing to take on controversy stand a chance of doing really great things and being remembered for it. In fact, I think most people we remember as heroes or other important figures were embroiled in controversy in their times. And I guess also, show of hands, controversy, negative connotation? Raise your hand if you think that's true. Cool. That's like half the hands. I've noticed that word has a negative connotation amongst most people I speak with, including individuals, founders, CEOs, who have benefited from it in their careers. And I think most people shy away from this word, but I tend to differ in opinion on the meaning. I tend to use it without the negative connotation. Someone once, many years, was like, you should think about positive controversy. And I've noticed that most of the large social networks, companies, personalities, artists, musicians, kind of grow based on some kind of edgy or fringy or controversial thing. And I think, innovative work is not always controversial, but oftentimes it is. And more importantly, I imagine most people in this room are trying to increase their odds of success. And I think thinking about controversy is probably a good thing there. As everyone probably realizes, human beings, for the most part, are creatures of habits. I'm one of them. I generally I think most people wake up somewhere around the same time every day, go to the same set of classes or same gym, same food, talk to a couple of our friends, go to bed and do the same thing over and over and over again. And while we're doing those things, we tend to see ads on the subway or billboards as we're in Ubers, or as we're scrolling through Instagram or Twitter or TikTok. We just ignore these ads that are all trying to get our attention. I think in order to get people's attention, this sounds pretty obvious, but you need to do something attention-worthy. And that's usually breaking the norm or doing something that your brain is not used to. It's not used to seeing. So I'd love to explore and reflect upon how maybe two figures in the music world, and then possibly together a few notable tech companies, have sort of harnessed controversy to cement their selves in our minds and places in history. And I hope at the very, very least that today at least you'll kind of think about controversy in a different way, and perhaps your mind will turn. And so I want to start off with Kanye West. I think he is a good example, or an example of someone who has repeatedly found his way into controversy. Does anybody, is anybody, well, actually just show of hands, like I was a Kanye fan, I think he crossed the line, so now I'm like, you know, I don't know where, I'm a confused Kanye fan. Raise your hand if you're a Kanye fan, and real quick. You're all banned from Colombia. No, I'm kidding. Raise your hand if you're not a Kanye fan because of some of the stuff he's done. Okay, he is a polarizing figure. I wanted to, just jump into, you know, a little bit of his story for those of you who don't know it from the early days of Kanye. And yeah, you know, I think Kanye first achieved this notoriety when he was a producer for Rockefeller Records. Does anyone know what his first kind of like big controversial moment was? Go for it. Exactly. Wow, big Kanye fan. Yeah, in 2005, during a telethon to raise funds for the victims of Hurricane Katrina, Kanye went off script to criticize the media's portrayal of black victims of the hurricane and federal government's response. Do you remember what he said? What did he say? You're canceled. No, exactly. He said, you know, he interrupted people and said, you know, George Bush doesn't care about black people, and you know, criticism of the comments were harsh, although many celebrities kind of agreed with him both publicly and privately, and most, you know, a lot of people today see it as an important moment in ways that, you know, celebrities talk about American race issues, and you know, that was Kanye's first moment. Now I'm gonna focus on you. Do you remember his second moment? Not the slightest, so this is the first moment. But that was like really when he became sort of a household name. It was, you know, a couple of years later when he interrupted somebody on MTV's VMAs, Taylor Swift, during her acceptance speech, where he kind of stole the mic from Taylor and said Beyonce was more deserving. And that was kind of a, you know, sort of timely, since a new album just came out right after that. And you know, a couple years later, Bill Cosby comes around, or he was already around, but Bill Cosby was in the media, and you know, Kanye is tweeting that he is innocent. And you know, Donald Trump then comes around, and Kanye kind of associates himself to him, and you know, he continues to do this, and it's all sort of around a music release. And I don't want to make any attempt to explain his behavior, whether he believes in this stuff or if it's all just art or part of the plan. You know, but he's lost friends, lost you know, a bunch of business. He's definitely kind of pushed the boundaries on that, sometimes strategically, sometimes in some kind of weird ways. But he gets this like insane news coverage that goes extremely viral, and it all comes to him for free. And it's like something that nobody can buy. And of course, like, his work's amazing. And so, but I guess one thing to note, there's a ton of people with amazing work that we're not talking about. And I think that's something that always kind of surprised me. I think, you know, when I was in high school or in you know, first year of college, I kind of remember thinking like the Steve Jobs-ism, if you build it, they will come. And, you know, maybe that was true 20 years ago. But today, there's just so many people that are so great that just go unnoticed, and I think they're missing, you know, this little piece that, you know, Kanye and some of the other people that maybe we'll discuss later have. One other quick example I want to share is a historical one that was like 70 years ago, and it's Elvis Presley. Does anybody know the Elvis Presley story on how he got known and mainstream? Let's hear it. That's correct. Yeah, I mean, Elvis Presley, I'll share the quick story. This was in the 50s, this show called the Milton Berle Show. He had been on several kind of TV appearances before, but nothing like this happened. And he always kind of played his untempo songs with a guitar strapped to him, which a guitar strapped to you limits your dancing. this time, before he was about to like go onto this Milton Berle show, Milton suggested, why don't you leave the guitar and let them see you? And so Elvis went on without his guitar and did a bunch of thrusting and crazy dance moves and gyrating his hips, thrusting his pelvis, and the world saw it, and they were shocked. This was often seen as the moment in time when, you know, Elvis became a huge star. And one crazy thing that happened, parents were horrified. Parents Teachers Association, you know, wrote a letter. Milton Berle got thousands of hate mail for it. Religious organizations protested it. And for years afterwards, this was kind of crazy when I was doing the research, Elvis was shown only from the waist up on TV. That's kind of crazy. And you know, today, obviously, it's super normal. And so I think more kind of broadly, what's controversial today sort of becomes commonplace tomorrow. And if we think even back to, you know, perhaps the Brady Bunch, an old show, they got a bunch of hate for putting a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, shown on television in the same bed. And at the time, that was super controversial. Two-piece swimsuits at the time, super controversial. And so, yeah, that's kind of one kind of interesting thing that I often try to think about is anytime I'm like, oh, that's weird or that's controversial, it's sort of what's controversial today becomes commonplace tomorrow. And yeah, I guess just some quick going back in history, like to the Elvis days. That was kind of post-World War II America in the 1950s, a time where, you know, social values were swinging more conservative as women kind of came back, retreated from the workplace, where they were filling in for men at war. And yeah, this was a time when rock and roll was apparently seen as African-American music. There was a radical new technology involved. Anyone want to guess? 1950s, radical new technology. Television. Television that, you know, some saw as the solution to issues like universal education, and others saw it as a huge threat to the safety of their children and the moral order of society. Does this sound familiar? I feel like oftentimes there's just tons of parallels in history with our own time. No matter how far back we look in history, we find controversy. And it always seems to involve changes between generations, different social values, and some kind of technology. And so soon I want to just open it up to more of a discussion and talk about Uber and Airbnb and Snap and Twitter and Facebook. I have a bunch of stories. I'm curious if you kind of know the stories of kind of how they got launched. But you know, in the end, controversy, whether we view it through a positive lens or a negative one, has been you know, just this common thread running through history, shaping our present, and undoubtedly will shape our future. And I think it's the defiant geniuses who embrace it, understand it, and use it that end up rewriting the rules and leaving marks on time. So real quick, I want to talk about kind of Facebook, Twitter, Uber, Airbnb. I don't have any other prepared remarks. I kind of want to make this a discussion and Q&A, but I will share real quickly. Does anyone know why Twitter was controversial when they first launched, or Facebook? The minds of Columbia Law School. Let's hear it, Torben.
I mean, I would say like there was this pre-app that Mark Zuckerberg did before Facebook. These like where you could swipe. Like, I think it was more like a dating. Yeah, exactly, more like a dating app or like a waiting people app. And I think that developed into this like social network. What was like controversial was this like, yeah, you waiting people against each other, and you have all of a sudden you maybe can do comments anonymously online where you no longer know that the people even knew you before, but they can still kind of say, oh, look at him or look at him, and it's kind of led probably especially in the university in the beginning to a lot of interesting social coherence.
Yeah, definitely rating people as like hot or not, you know, people swipe left or right, or if they liked them or didn't like them, I think, back in the day. And that got them really in trouble with the university. When Facebook kind of launched more broadly, I remember when I was in middle school or getting an account, and either my parents or grandparents were like, you can't do that. You're putting your personal information online. And at the time, those were the news stories that were coming out about Facebook, was like, you put your personal information online and you will get hacked. You will get your identity stolen. My identity has never been stolen until 3 days ago. I was just on the phone with like the LifeLock to get it done. But at the time, Facebook, that was the big kind of news headline, was your personal identity should not be online. My grandparents to this day don't have a Facebook account, but I think they were wrong about that. Twitter, the prompt of Twitter in the early days was, "What are you doing?" And you were supposed to kind of post what we know today as like a status update. But the news media at the time was like, if you say that you're at Columbia right now, that means you're not at home and your house is going to get robbed. And that was kind of the huge media cycle around Twitter, and why that was controversial. Was like, you can't post what you're doing. You can't tell people that you're on Instagram that you're on vacation right now. If you do that, your house will get robbed. Airbnb is obviously obvious. Having a stranger sleep in your home, you're going to get killed or raped, or that was the media there. Same thing with Uber, getting into a stranger's car. All of these things, like, super controversial right when they launched, and then it becomes more of a commonplace. So as an investor, I meet with founders probably 200 a month, very high volume, 10-minute meetings. And oftentimes what I'm looking for when I meet those people is how is this unique? How is this different? And is this somewhat attention grabbing? Everything else is pretty table stakes. Everyone can have a great idea. Everyone knows how to build. ChatGPT especially makes it even easier to do that. I think this kind of getting attention and marketing is going to become more and more valuable as the days, weeks, months, years go on, given how easy things are to do. And so, I want to pause there and open it up to kind of any questions about anything: life, startups, controversy, arbitration.
Let's give Cory a round of applause, and let's open up for Q&A. So, Cory, I have a question for you, which is, so obviously you were sort of one of these founders who was at the forefront of anonymous social media. For people who don't know, Cory is the founder of After School, which was sort of like Yik Yak, really big in a lot of high schools. And so I guess, to me, you've been talking a lot about like the positives of controversy. Anonymous social media as like a concept is something that always works for a little bit and then sort of like seems to fade because of these controversial aspects of it: hate speech, bullying, things like this. Can you talk a little bit about like where is the line between good controversy and bad?
Where is the line between good controversy and bad? It's a tough question. I think anonymous social networking hasn't really worked outside of things like Reddit, which I'm also an investor in. I think they've done a good job of having this pseudo-anonymous, you have your profile, you don't have to use your name. I think they've done a really good job of that. But the internet is, I think net obviously positive, but there's a lot of negative stuff that come from it. So to be honest, I don't know where the line is. That's something that is a longer conversation that, maybe the line is, I don't know if that's Mark Zuckerberg who should be making the decision, or elected officials who should be making the decision on where the line is. It is obviously a very interesting debate. It's probably not Mark Zuckerberg who should be deciding where the line is. It should probably not be me deciding where the line is, because that's not kind of what we set out to do. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg set out to decide what's hate speech and what is not. But yeah, no, I don't have a great answer to that question. It was always really, really tough. What we did at after school, our previous company was we engaged dozens of people from various industries to help us design rules and guidelines for what was allowed and what wasn't allowed, whether that was mental health professionals, whether that was people at the big companies like Facebook and Twitter. We had like dozens of people kind of in our ears telling us what we should do and what we shouldn't do, since it was all new to us, and I could imagine it was new to him as well. What's up in the back?
I'm curious, so a lot of the controversy you highlighted in your opening remarks is kind of ex post controversy, like the people, if we just assume they're acting kind of spontaneously and with no particular intent, the things they did in retrospect were controversial because they sparked controversy at the time. But then when you're coming at it from an entrepreneurial bent or getting an understanding for controversy as a catalyst for new ventures, what role do you think, or how different is the role of controversy at the inception of a business than it is for existing ventures or for public figures?
Yeah, so I think, the people that I mentioned, I think did do it with intent. They knew what they were doing. I think Kanye does it with intent. I think Donald Trump does it with intent. I think Jake Paul does it with intent. Some of these people, not Donald Trump, not Kanye West, but some of these controversial figures or companies I'm an investor in and kind of get to see what goes on behind the scenes. And I think all of these people do it with intent. And so when you're starting a company, or you want to become a musician, or you want to kind of get attention, I think these are interesting things to explore of accidental controversy. Yeah. Yeah, in short, I think they were done with intent, and when you're doing something, you should have intent on how something's going to grow. Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, he once kind of told me something that I'll never forget when it comes around to kind of building products. His advice was kind of in the early stages was if you spend 3 months building a product, or you spend 2 months making a song, you should spend an equal amount of time figuring out how you're going to market it and how you're going to build growth into it. LinkedIn is another example that may not appear controversial, but when they launched, they did something that was very controversial. They, what they did was, you signed up for a LinkedIn profile, you connected your, what was it called, contact list, email list that you had saved in your Gmail or whatever was around back then, Yahoo Mail. And what LinkedIn did was they scraped every single email address and every single name and then created fake profiles for those people. And so if Sahaj worked at Google and his email address was sahaj@google.com, and he was in my contact list, he would get an email, Sahaj, Google, be like, what the fuck is this? Click on it, claim your profile, edit it, why am I on the internet? And that was how LinkedIn kind of went like this. That wasn't accidental. That was very calculated. Torben, and then in the back.
When I think of controversial people in tech, I think of Peter Thiel, and I mean, he obviously went to law school, and I think he has some of the most probably contrarian, or he says some of the most contrarian things in tech that you can say. And he also used about Trump in 2016, one of the few people in the kind of, for say, Silicon Valley ecosystem. Maybe you can share a few thoughts, stories, if you have some, on him, and maybe that also relates to some here in law school, and maybe even if law school drove his kind of contrarian take to a lot of the conventions that we have in society.
Yeah, I've met Peter a number of times. I think I didn't know him when he was in law school, but from the stories that I've heard, it seems like he was controversial in his undergrad as well. And kind of growing up, that whole kind of PayPal mafia did kind of crazy things in their teens, in their 20s, and then obviously as they've continued to grow older, they continue to do that. So I think it was more innate for them. I think they were all had a history. PayPal founders had a history of building bombs when they were in high school. They did a lot of things to get in trouble when they were at Stanford. One of them, I think, was kicked out of either Stanford Law School, then had to go to Harvard, or Harvard Law School, and had to go back to Stanford. So yeah, I think they got that. And obviously they've all gone off to build amazing companies that require attention, and they were doing crazy things to get attention as kids. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah. What's up in the back, and then.
Hi, thanks for your time. I just wanted to ask a question. I know most of your talk has been centered around the idea of controversy, and maybe something very uncontroversial is friendship and the importance of friendship, especially in building new ventures. Could you kind of speak to, maybe in your own experience of building your own company, or in the many companies which you hear pitches for as an investor, what the importance has been of a team and of being surrounded with like-minded people who have a similar goal and share a similar passion?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important things possible. I think that saying that I'll probably F up, but like, you are the people you surround yourself with, is just so true. And so we just did this experiment this past weekend, a couple days ago. I sent a tweet out maybe a month or two ago and was like, hey, new experiment. I want to get 10 founders together in a remote location with a Navy SEAL and see what happens. And so this past weekend, we went to the northern woods of Wisconsin with 25 founders, a Navy SEAL, and the schedule was very simple. It was wake up, work out, eat, work, and kind of repeat a couple times. And no one knew each other, or like very few people knew each other. So everyone was going in with just maybe like, I think we all are similar because we're ambitious and we're working on stuff, but we don't really know each other. And by the end of the couple of days, everyone's best friends with each other. We'll see what happens in the future. We're 2 days out. But I think that stuff's super important. I think if you want to be healthy, surround yourself with healthy people. If you want to be ambitious, surround yourself with ambitious people. If you want to be a movie star, go to LA. That's where all those people are. And so, yeah, it was something, I asked the Navy SEAL, I was like, wait a second. I would imagine you joined the Navy SEALs because you wanted to be elite. It was you versus your mind. No one around you was like you. But all you talk about during this retreat is how important the team is. How did you go from being a high achieving solo person to joining this elite SEAL team? And he was like, well, I'm sure his answer was like, when you put someone around other people that are just as ambitious as you, 1 + 1 = 3. And we kind of saw that, with the founders at this retreat this past weekend. And I think, Peter Thiel and his mafia at Stanford has found that for, decades. They're all still friends with each other. They all still push each other. They all still build amazing things together. So I think that's something to be introspective on and reflect upon, and look at yourself and say, am I happy with my circle? And if not, we're in an amazing place right now. And time where you're in New York City. There are a fuck ton of amazing people here. If we were in Wisconsin, I would say we got to leave Wisconsin. Sorry if is anyone from Wisconsin? All right, we're safe. In the front.
So for your fellows, you said that you interview 100-ish people, 10 minutes each.
Yep.
For my previous venture, I interviewed 200, 15 minutes each. It's a lot of work. How do you get to know someone in 10 minutes?
Great question. How do you get to know someone in 10 minutes? It's hard. I'm sure we've missed many people that we didn't get the privilege of getting to know for longer. But in 10 minutes, someone can share their story in a concise way, and it kind of allows us to know, do we want to spend more time with the person? Do we want to spend less time with the person? Do we want to track the person? Most times, a lot of investors, what they do is they invest in lines, not data points. And the 10 minutes that we spend with people is one data point, and then there's kind of probably more 10 minutes or more things over email where we check in with people. And one of the biggest things that we look for is not necessarily absolute progress, but progress over time. So someone we met with in September was here, and then in October they were here. But that difference was just 20 users. They've made progress. the most scary thing is stasis, and we often find that a lot of people, like, we interview, they say we want to be here in 3 months. We write that down, we check in with them in 3 months, and a lot of times they're in the same place. That's really scary. Yeah.
To follow up on that, in some cases when it seems like it stays, this point here and point here, it may go like this, it may go like this, it may go like this. In a lot of cases, in great companies, they specifically look for people who have been knocked down and then get back up. From a point view, you can't tell. So how would you parse that out?
Good question. In that case, we'd probably miss it, but I can share a little bit of what we do and kind of what we look for when we're doing these kind of 10-minute interviews. That may be helpful. I tend to love to focus on people that were doing things from an early age that were unique or different. Doesn't have to be part of their business, but where they did they excel at something at an early age, whether it be a club, a sport, a random topic they were interested in. Basically, just trying to find people that were different when they were kids, in some capacity. So that's one of the big things, non-traditional things that they were doing as a kid. That's something super important. Obviously, there are plenty of examples of people that were not doing non-traditional things as a kid that have gone off to build successful companies, but that's kind of the area that we tend to to focus on. Probably 80-20, probably Pareto rule. 80% is that, 20% is et cetera. And that's just been founder of Cruise, the driverless cars. That founder, he built attempted to build a self-driving car when he was in high school for a science fair project. Didn't go so well. Did some other stuff. Kind of went back to it. Did some other stuff. Went back to it, and then obviously built a really successful company. So that maybe is an example where they, it kind of looked a little bit messy, but you still had that commonality of doing something doing something unique from an early age. It's hard to kind of fake that. I guess that's a lot of the things we try to suss out. I think investors are really good psychologists. And when things get tough, you want the person that's genuinely obsessed with the thing, not just, oh, this is a big market, so we want to go work in this market. And then when things get tough, they're like, oh, fuck that, we're gonna go from crypto to AI. That's not particularly what we like to do. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's really, really tough. I like to invest when there's no data points or very few data points, no other investor. Usually the person is not even incorporated, so it's the riskiest part of the journey. So in short, I'm still figuring it out. Most controversial idea that I've had or that I've invested in. Invested in. One entertainment company, it's still not quite live, but it's been beta tested, is this company called Humaning. What this founder is doing is trying to turn the world into a video game. And so I don't know if anyone's seen the sci-fi movie Nerve or the TV show Impractical Jokers, or I don't know what else there is out there, but those are probably two examples of it where you have people sitting on their couches controlling people in the real world. And so he thinks that's the future of entertainment. He thinks that instead of watching something on a television or on a screen, instead you'll be able to talk to it, and it'll be real humans that you're kind of controlling in the real world. So that's kind of a interactive media is a controversial thing. Obviously, the pros of it are there are a bunch of pros and cons of it. So the pessimists would say people are just going to be sitting on their couches controlling people to do weird things. And the pros of it are, if I wanted to go visit a country that I'm unable to afford to go visit, I can go do it through the eyes of somebody else. If I want to learn how to, if I want to see what something is like before actually doing it, I can go do it through somebody else. So anyways, that's one kind of controversial recent company that I've invested in. And then like just controversial hot takes, I can share two really quick ones. Sahaj is laughing. I'll do one on the business side and one on the more weird side. On the business side, I think the S&P 500 is a bad investment. Raise your hand if you agree. S&P 500. Raise your hand high so I can actually see. Okay, a few. Raise your hand if you disagree. Okay, it's controversial. The other thing is, and the reason I think the S&P 500 is a bad investment is because it's just like the obvious thing to do. All the alpha's been squeezed. So anyways, I think there's not much room for growth in some of these big companies that the S&P 500 holds. I'd much rather invest in companies that have, the apples 20 years ago, not the apples today. The other controversial little hot take that I think will happen is that in our lifetime, it will be normal to eat out at a restaurant and be completely naked. Who thinks that's going to happen, or who disagrees? Wait, who agrees? Raise your hand. We got one. All right. Who disagrees? Everyone else? That's controversial. It's polarizing. But here, let me explain why. As I sort of mentioned earlier, the two-piece swimsuit, 50 years ago, incredibly controversial to wear a two-piece swimsuit as a female. Today, what are the swimsuits that people wear? I mean, people are like practically naked. Lululemon, I think, or somebody like made see-through pants that got banned. And I think, we were born naked. We're gonna die naked. Like I think in our lifetime, it'll be, most people, celebrities, they wear basically nothing, and I think whether we like it or not, we're moving in that direction. So in 50 years from now, can I see like people showing up naked to a restaurant? Definitely. Looks like me and you are the only ones that agree with that. What's up? Yeah. The worst investment? Oh, great question. The worst investment, I would say that, because I love to back and invest in kind of crazy people, sometimes they're too crazy. And so there have been, as of, I think this past month, and so, I guess just to give some context, there are two style of investments that I make. One is sort of this high volume, $10,000 check into people for, this 1 week kind of program that I run. And then the others are, a little bit more, 6 and 7 figure checks into companies that are way less frequent. There have been at least 2 examples that I know of where the founder has been institutionalized, as in they were that crazy where they had to go into a mental hospital. I think there's like probably less than 5, but 2 that I know of that have gone into a mental hospital, a few that have stolen money. I wasn't the biggest investor, but the bigger investors are kind of suing the person. Those are times when you're wrong. You're like, oh wow, this person's crazy, but the bad crazy. It's tough to suss out. Yeah.
Do you have any experiences working with former lawyers as founders? And it strikes me as I wonder if we'd be particularly bad at it. What do former lawyers tend to do as founders? And do you have any recommendations for us?
Yeah, my first investor, the person that first gave me capital, was a former lawyer. And he, for the first, from age 20 to 30, was on this path. Did work in big law for a little bit, I think, and then was convinced to leave and kind of join a company kind of maybe weeks or months before the dot-com bust happened. So it was poor timing, but it worked out for him. I think lawyers have a few kind of unfair advantages. This particular person was one of the first investors in YouTube because he understood the kind of legal complexities of it and was like, I think we can fight this. So I think, a lot of times to push progress forward, to push people forward, to push companies forward. I mean, Uber is another example where it's like us against the medallions. Who wants to take that bet? I think people with a law background are best suited for that. And yeah, so in short, I think there's a lot of ways that lawyers and tech people can collide.
Just going to clarify this before I leave. So you think everyone will be naked in the restaurant, or only some people will be naked?
What do you think?
Well, I think like there's like nude beaches. I think there's going to be nude restaurants.
Yeah, I like that. I haven't thought about that. I agree. I don't think everyone will be. Maybe. I don't know. I haven't thought that deeply about it. I'll think about it. But I think there will be nude restaurants. Yeah. Sorry. People wear a bit. Oh. Well, I didn't know we'd go more deeply into this. Yeah, maybe we should start a bibs company. Everyone will be naked and they'll wear a bib. But yeah, no, I like I haven't thought about that, but I think there will be a nude restaurant within the next 10 years, and probably the more people being nude in the next 50 years. But the bibs I haven't thought about. What's up, Will? Or Mike? Yeah. What? Sorry, one more time? Just, coming to have fun. My friend over here, we were joking about this, and I was like, all right, let's do it. And then, yeah, I personally, I love to meet random people. I love to, I don't watch television. I can't sit on a couch, and so I get, yeah, I love meeting new people and doing weird stuff and going into places that are uncomfortable. I don't like public speaking. I'm sure I said a billion times, and so, yeah.
I just wanted to ask how natural you found the transition from founder to investor, and how you ended up in a place where you're meeting like hundreds of founders a month and investing so early on in their startups.
Yeah, great question. I think the founder investor role is quite similar. As a founder, your primary job, or a couple of your primary jobs, are 1, to recruit amazing people, and 2, set vision, and 3, raise capital, and 4, absorb problems. And as an investor, your job is to do similar things: find amazing people, find undiscovered talent. And so, when I was running and operating a company and solely focused on that, my majority of my job, I had a co-founder that was kind of more internal, and he kind of absorbed the role of the CTO. And I was more external and was trying to assemble an amazing team. And so what that required was very similar to whatever the investor job is, which is like meet a bunch of people, find a bunch of people with non-traditional backgrounds that you think are undiscovered and can be really, really great. And that is what you do as an investor as well. And then things compound. I think that is something that I'm sure everyone's experienced. And so, yeah, things compound. You meet one, they say you should meet this person. Sahaj brought me here. Maybe I'll meet 1 or 2 or 3 of y'all after this, and then things just sort of compound.
I have one for you right here. He actually told me he wanted to pitch you.
Hi, Cory. First, I'd like to disclose that I don't know much about the startup industry. I just know that I want to go into it. I'm from Ohio, so all we know there is cornfields and office jobs.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start. My name is Wayne. Nice to meet you. I'm studying computer science and biomedical engineering. I have a pipe dream to make a startup that's essentially pushing the bounds of medical treatment, specifically providing personalized medicine via the study of proteomics and genomics. So basically what we'll do is we'll be able to sequence DNA and be able to provide insight into what diseases a person will have, the probability of that. And not only will we be able to do that, I know a lot of companies are already doing that, we'll be able to provide personalized medicine via proteomics and predicting the folds of the proteins that those people have, and designing the specific enzymes or treatments that those people need.
something that really got me invested into this was like in Ohio, we have like these big signs, and they always say that there's no routine cancer. And like, I'm like, I really agree with that, but right now there's just this like standardized treatment for cancer and all this. What if we can be personalized?
Got it. Well, let's talk. We got a live Shark Tank audience. No, let's talk one-on-one after. I want to be mindful of time. Maybe we'll take one final question. This is probably a longer answer or discussion, but if one, there were some other hands, so one final question, and then we can wrap up. So,
what do you want to do as a child?
What did I want to do as a child? Play a lot of tennis, and I was always the kid that would like try to find the artists before they were big, or the app before it was big, or kind of people before they were big, and so I came from the tennis courts, and I'm still doing those things, which I'm privileged to be doing and honored to be doing. But thank you all for listening. By the way, I guess there are no slides, but I'm very easily discoverable on the internet. It's just Cory on Twitter and Instagram and other things, just Cory. And there you can find an email address and all of that fun stuff. But I want to be mindful of time. Sahaj, thank you for organizing. Thanks for coming, and I'll hang out for a little bit.